The morning light spills softly through the curtains. Eleanor stands by the window, her hands resting on the sill. The garden outside glows with dew and quiet colors. She breathes in the calm air, feeling a familiar tightness in her shoulder. It's been there for months, like a quiet guest that never leaves. She used to move with ease, lifting pots, painting, reaching high shelves. Now, even tying her apron feels heavy. She sighs, her breath slow and careful. Age, she thinks, just age. But beneath the thought, there's something else, a whisper of hope. Maybe it doesn't have to stay this way. Maybe the body can still learn, even after 60. Outside, a bird lands on the fence, light and effortless. Eleanor watches, her shoulder aching but her heart steady. She lifts her arm slightly, testing the air. The movement is small, barely there, but it's a start. The kind of start that asks for patience. The kind that begins with one slow stretch. And in that quiet morning light, she promises herself to move again. It started so quietly that Eleanor almost didn't notice. A stiffness here, a tug there. Nothing dramatic. Just a small reminder each morning that something inside her was changing. She thought it was just tiredness. A little soreness from gardening, maybe. But the ache began to linger. It stayed through breakfast, through chores, through her quiet afternoon tea. When she reached up to water her hanging plants, her arm resisted. The motion that used to be easy now felt distant, foreign. She frowned, lowering her arm slowly, pretending it was nothing. Everyone slows down after 60, she told herself. It's part of the rhythm of life. But deep inside, she felt something else, a fear she didn't name. She didn't like losing control. She had always been strong, independent, graceful in movement. Now each gesture felt borrowed, uncertain. The stiffness became her shadow. She carried it into every day, hoping it would fade. But it didn't. It stayed when she cooked, when she brushed her hair, when she painted. Her brush strokes grew shorter, less fluid. The joy she once found in art started to shrink behind frustration. One morning, while making tea, the kettle felt heavier than usual. She tried to lift it, and a dull pain shot through her shoulder. It wasn't sharp, but it was deep, like a quiet protest. She set it down quickly, breathing out in surprise. Her hand trembled slightly. She laughed to herself, a tired, soft laugh. How strange it was, this betrayal by her own body. She told no one. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted understanding, but mostly she wanted silence. So she moved slower, adapting without realizing it. She changed how she reached for things, how she dressed, how she slept. Her body adjusted, even as her confidence faded. She began to avoid movements that hurt. It was easier that way. But the less she moved, the stiffer she became. It was a quiet cycle, one she didn't see until it was too late. One afternoon, her granddaughter asked her to play catch in the yard. Eleanor smiled and said yes, even though her shoulder hesitated. The ball flew toward her, gentle and light. She reached out, but her arm stopped short. The ball slipped past, rolling into the grass. Her granddaughter giggled, running after it. Eleanor smiled too, but something inside her sank. That night she sat by her window, holding her shoulder with her hand. The ache pulsed softly under her fingers, steady as breath. She whispered to herself, "When did I stop moving freely?" The question lingered in the air, unanswered. She thought about the small things she missed, the stretch to close the curtains, the ease of reaching for a book. Simple things that once felt effortless now seemed far away. The next morning, as the sun rose over her garden, she stood up slowly. She decided to move, even if it hurt. Not to fight her body, but to listen to it. To start where she was, with what she could do. And for the first time in months, Eleanor lifted her arm again, slowly, gently, without fear. The morning sun touched the garden like a quiet invitation. Eleanor stepped outside, her breath meeting the cool air. The scent of wet earth filled her lungs, calm and grounding. She placed her hands on the back of a wooden chair, steady and sure. The wood was rough under her palms, familiar, honest. She stood still for a moment, listening to the rhythm of her breath. Inhale, exhale. Her shoulders rose and fell, slow, deliberate. The pain was still there, a dull whisper under the skin. But today she didn't shrink from it. She decided to meet it halfway. The wind brushed her hair across her face. The garden hummed with small sounds, birds, leaves, life. She began to move gently. Her right arm lifted slightly, her elbow bent. It wasn't high, but it was enough. She felt the stretch ripple across her shoulder, tender but alive. Her breath caught for a moment, then softened again. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. She counted each motion, each breath. 1, 2, 3. Her body resisted, but her patience held. There was no rush, no goal, just presence. The chair creaked softly as she leaned forward. Her back straightened, her shoulders rolled back. A slow, circular motion, half a circle, then another. The stiffness loosened, almost imperceptibly. But she felt it. A quiet opening, a release of something held too long. She smiled faintly, her eyes soft with focus. The stretch was not about perfection. It was about permission. Permission to move again, to trust again. The garden seemed to breathe with her, a gentle companion. The sunlight warmed her arm as she lifted it higher. Still slow, still cautious, but stronger than before. The pain didn't vanish, but it changed. It became a guide instead of a wall. Each stretch told her something. Where to pause, when to breathe, how to listen. She realized she had spent months avoiding this conversation with her body. Now she was learning its language again. Her movements were not elegant, but they were honest. When she lowered her arm, she felt a quiet pride. It wasn't much to anyone else, but it meant everything to her. The birds fluttered past, as if celebrating her small victory. She rested her hands on the chair once more, closing her eyes. The breeze moved gently around her, brushing her face like encouragement. She whispered to herself, "Slow is still progress." And she meant it. She stayed there for a while, breathing in rhythm with the morning. Every exhale carried away a little bit of fear. Every inhale brought in something lighter. It was not just a stretch, it was a return. A return to trust, to patience, to herself. When she finally stepped back inside, her shoulders felt different. Not fixed, not perfect, but freer. Like the garden, she was learning how to bloom again, slowly, gently, beautifully. That afternoon, Eleanor found her old sketchbook tucked beneath a pile of books. The cover was worn, the pages curled at the edges. But her name still shone faintly. She ran her fingers across it, remembering the days when her hands moved with ease. She used to paint every morning, letting colors flow the way her breath once did. Her arms would lift gracefully, her shoulders strong and sure. Each brushstroke felt like music, a rhythm only she could hear. But now, even opening the sketchbook felt heavy, uncertain. She sat by the window, sunlight spilling across the paper. Her right shoulder tensed as she lifted the pencil. The movement was small, but it carried the weight of memory. She began to draw slow lines, shaky but deliberate. Circles, loops, gentle arcs. Nothing perfect, just motion. Her shoulder ached, yet there was something soft in that ache. It reminded her she was still capable of feeling, still capable of trying. As the pencil moved, memories returned like soft echoes. Children laughing in her art class. Tiny hands dipping brushes into paint. the way she used to guide them. Lift your arm, follow the curve, breathe with the line. Now she whispered those same words to herself. Lift, follow, breathe. The rhythm was familiar, comforting. Each stroke connected her past self with her present one. She didn't paint for beauty anymore. She painted to remember what movement felt like, to remember who she was before the stiffness. The garden outside shimmered through the window. Her eyes followed the gentle sway of flowers, the easy stretch of nature. Everything moved slowly, yet everything was alive. Maybe that was the secret. Movement didn't have to be fast to be free. It just had to be honest. Her shoulder loosened a little with each line. Her breath steadied, her jaw unclenched. She drew until her hand trembled lightly, the page filled with soft shapes. Then she stopped and smiled. The pain was still there, but it no longer felt like defeat. It felt like a companion, a reminder that even through struggle, she could create something beautiful. She placed the pencil down and rolled her shoulders back. The motion was slow but smoother than before. Her body remembered piece by piece. Not perfectly, but faithfully. She looked at her drawing, imperfect, tender, alive. It wasn't a painting of flowers or people. It was a portrait of movement itself, of effort, of patience, of rediscovery. The sun dipped lower, painting gold across her hands. Eleanor closed the sketchbook, her heart light. She whispered to herself, I can still move, I can still make. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the soft hum of life, she realized something simple. Control was never about strength. It was about connection, between breath, body, and the courage to begin again. The next morning began with silence, the kind that feels almost sacred. Eleanor sat on the edge of her bed, her hands resting on her thighs. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain from the night before. She closed her eyes and listened to her own breathing. Inhale, exhale. The sound was steady, soft, almost like a song. She realized she hadn't truly listened to her breath in years. It was always there, working quietly, waiting for her attention. Now it was her teacher. She placed one hand on her chest, the other on her stomach. She felt the rise and fall beneath her palms, gentle waves of life. Her shoulder ached faintly, reminding her of its limits. But she didn't fight it. She breathed into it instead. With every inhale, she imagined warmth spreading through the tightness. With every exhale, she imagined the pain melting, just a little. She began to move her arms slowly, matching the rhythm of her breath. Up on the inhale, down on the exhale. No rush, no force, just a conversation between body and breath. Her muscles resisted at first, but then they softened, listening too. The more she breathed, the lighter her arm felt. It wasn't strength she was gaining, it was understanding. She thought of all the times she had moved without awareness. How often she had rushed, pushed, strained, ignored the body's quiet voice. Now she realized how powerful it was to move slowly, with care. Each breath felt like a hand guiding her back to herself. The world outside stirred with morning sounds, birds, wind, a distant hum of life. Inside, everything slowed to the rhythm of inhale and exhale. Eleanor rolled her shoulders gently, circles small and controlled. She could feel the muscles waking, stretching, opening. Her breath deepened, her eyes stayed closed. For the first time, she felt her body not as a burden but as a partner. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had changed its tone. It no longer shouted, it whispered. And she could finally hear what it was saying. Move gently. Stay patient. Trust me. She opened her eyes and smiled, a small curve of quiet pride. Her body was learning to trust her again. Her breath was the bridge between them. She lifted her arms one more time, slow and mindful. The motion felt smoother, softer, almost graceful. Each breath carried her through it like a tide carrying a leaf. She stayed with that rhythm for a long time, eyes half closed, peaceful. The world moved quickly, but she didn't need to. Her healing was not in haste, it was in harmony. And as she exhaled one last time, long and deep, she whispered to herself, "This is enough. This is how I begin again." Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor's mornings began to feel different. The stiffness was still there, but it no longer ruled her. It waited quietly at the edges, softened by her patience. Each sunrise brought a new chance to move, to practice, to breathe. Her routine became a quiet ritual. She would stand by the window, lift her arms slowly, and let the light touch her skin. Inhale to rise. Exhale to release. Sometimes her shoulder cracked softly, like old wood adjusting to weather. She smiled at the sound. It meant her body was listening. Her movements were small, but they were steady. She didn't chase progress anymore. She welcomed it when it came. Some mornings felt easy, her arm light as air. Other mornings the ache returned, asking for patience again. But even on those days she moved. Even on those days she breathed. She began to notice changes in the quietest ways. Her arm lifted higher without strain. She could reach the top shelf again, where her teacups waited. She could hang her apron, fold her laundry, brush her hair without hesitation. Small victories, but they filled her with quiet joy. Her granddaughter visited one afternoon with a bright yellow ball. "Grandma, want to play?" she asked, her eyes full of light. Eleanor hesitated for a second, then nodded. The ball came toward her, gentle, playful. She lifted her arm, slow but sure, and caught it. Her granddaughter clapped, laughing. Eleanor laughed too, her eyes wet with surprise. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed this simple, effortless play. They threw the ball back and forth for a while, sunlight dancing between them. Each throw was a reminder that her strength had never truly left. It had just been waiting for her to slow down enough to find it. Later that evening, she sat by the window, her favorite place of reflection. Her arm rested comfortably at her side, no sharp pain, just warmth. She traced small circles with her shoulder, feeling its freedom. She whispered, "We're getting there." She no longer moved to fix herself. She moved to feel alive, to remind her body it was still hers, still capable, still strong in quiet ways. She thought about all the times she had avoided movement out of fear. Now she understood that movement itself was the cure. Each breath, each stretch, each pause was a message of care. Her body had not betrayed her, it had simply asked for her attention. The garden outside swayed gently, mirroring her calm rhythm. The world still turned fast, but she didn't chase it anymore. Her healing didn't need speed, it needed presence. And as the sun dipped low, painting her walls gold, Eleanor smiled softly. Progress, she realized, wasn't always loud or visible. Sometimes it was a slow, silent victory, hidden in the way she moved. One gentle stretch at a time. The rain had stopped, leaving the morning washed and clear. Eleanor stood by the doorway, looking out at her garden. The air was cool, the soil dark and shining. She rolled her shoulders gently, feeling the quiet strength in their movement. It wasn't the stiffness she felt anymore, it was stability. The kind that came from patience, not power. She took a deep breath and began her routine. Slow circles, gentle lifts, long exhales that carried away what was left of the pain. Her arms moved like branches in the breeze, steady, calm, sure. There was grace in her slowness now. Every motion carried intention. She no longer feared the tightness, she understood it. Her body spoke softly, and she finally knew how to listen. The mirror in the hallway caught her reflection. Her posture was different, taller, lighter. Her shoulders no longer curled inward. They opened naturally, as if remembering their purpose. She smiled at herself, not out of vanity, but recognition. This was the woman who had once thought she'd lost control. Now she had found something deeper. Not the control of force, but of awareness. Each stretch she did was like a conversation with her younger self. "I'm still here," she whispered inside. "And I'm still learning." Her breath flowed like rhythm, like memory. Inhale, lift. Exhale, release. The pain that once felt heavy had turned into a quiet teacher. It reminded her to move slowly, to move kindly, to never rush the moments that mattered. As she continued her routine, she noticed how her hands no longer trembled, how her arms no longer hesitated halfway through a motion. Her movements were full again, rounded and whole. The chair she once held for balance now sat untouched beside her. She didn't need it anymore. Her strength was not in the muscles, it was in the control, the calm. She felt grounded, like a tree that had learned to bend without breaking. The world outside was alive with soft color. Birds dipped between branches. Leaves sparkled under the morning sun. Eleanor closed her eyes and lifted her arms one last time. The stretch flowed through her body like light, smooth and free. It felt like breathing through the skin. When she lowered them, her heart felt light. Her movements, once uncertain, were now deliberate, peaceful. She whispered, "This is what healing feels like." It wasn't perfection. It was presence. Control had come back to her, not through strength but through slowness. Through listening. Through grace. She stepped outside, her bare feet touching the damp earth. The garden greeted her with quiet applause, the rustle of leaves, the hum of bees. Eleanor lifted her face to the sky, her shoulders open, her body steady. For the first time in a long time, she didn't think about the pain. She just moved. Slow, balanced, free. And in that still, radiant morning, she realized she had become the calm she once sought. The morning light returned, soft and golden through the window. Eleanor stood in its glow, her hands resting easily at her sides. The air was calm, the world unhurried, and so was she. She lifted her arms slowly, feeling the quiet rhythm of her breath. No pain. Just warmth. Just presence. The movement was simple, but it felt like freedom. She looked toward her garden, alive and bright after the rain. Every leaf seemed to mirror her calm, her quiet strength. She thought of the months behind her, the stiffness, the patience, the small victories. Each stretch had been a step, each breath a promise. Now her shoulders moved with ease, light and sure. The control she had regained was not power over her body. It was peace with it. She smiled, a soft, content smile. After 60, she had learned something new, that healing is slow but it is real. That every slow movement carries wisdom. That control can be gentle. Eleanor closed her eyes, lifted her face to the light and whispered, "I'm home again."